fourth graders, today we're going to talk about how to convert different customary units of measurement with distance and length. So I think you're all pretty familiar with inches, feet, yards, and miles, but we're going to talk a little bit more in depth with them today. Now I've made this chart just as a visual, and it's not completely accurate. It is not drawn to scale, but you can see that an inch is smaller than a foot, which is smaller than a yard, which is smaller than a mile. And we've got preset conversions that help us to be able to convert from one unit to another. So for example, it takes 12 inches to make 1 foot, takes 3 feet to make 1 yard, it takes 1,760 yards to make 1 mile, and it also takes 5,280 feet to make 1 mile. And today what we're going to look at is converting from these different units to another. So for example, I might be able to figure out how many miles are in a certain amount of inches. So that would be going from a larger unit of measure to a smaller one. But I could also do the opposite, and I could figure out how many inches there are in a certain number of miles. So that would be going from a smaller unit of measure to a larger unit. So let's look first. If we were converting from a larger unit, such as a mile or a yard, to a smaller unit, such as a foot or an inch, what would that look like? And it's going to involve multiplication. So for example, if I wanted to figure out how many inches there are in 12 feet, well, I know that 1 foot is 12 inches. So 12 feet is going to be 12 inches times 12. And I could use multiplication to figure that out, or some of you already know that 12 times 12 is 144, and I'm going to put that label of inches. So 12 feet is the same as 144 inches. If I wanted to go from another larger unit, such as miles, and figure out how many yards there are within 4 miles, well, I know that 1 mile is equal to 1,760 yards. So 4 miles is going to be 1,760 times 4. Now that I don't know off the top of my head, so I'm going to use multiplication to figure it out. So there are 7,040 yards in 4 miles. Now, if you're looking for a challenge, we could look at fractions. So looking at a fraction of a unit and figuring out how many, let's say, feet are in that. So if I had half of a yard, and I'm trying to figure out how many feet are in half a yard, well, I know I've been using multiplication. So one option would be 1/2 times 3, because I know that it takes 3 feet to make a yard. And if you remember back to multiplying with fractions, we know that we multiply the numerator times the numerator and the denominator times the denominator. And if I have a whole number, I'm going to make that into 1/2 times 3/1, because 3 is the same as 3/1. So 1 times 3 is 3, 2 times 1 is 2, and that's an improper fraction. So I can make that into a mixed number by dividing. 3 divided by 2 is 1, and I have 1 as a remainder, and I keep my denominator of 2. So half of a yard is 1.5 feet. And for something like this, where it only takes 3 feet to make a yard, you could even draw a picture. And if you know that it takes 3 feet to make 1 yard, and you were to divide that right in half, you could see that you've got 1 1/2 feet to make 1 yard. Now that wouldn't really be feasible if you were doing miles, but just for this particular one, you could check with a picture. I always love drawing a picture to represent my thinking. So let's try converting from smaller to larger units. So that would mean if I've got 60 inches and I want to figure out how many feet that is, I'm going from a smaller unit of measure to a larger unit. So here I'm going to divide. 60 inches is equivalent to how many feet? Well, I know that 12 inches equals 1 foot, and now I've got 60 inches. So I can divide 60 by 12. Now, we haven't done long division with 2-digit numbers, but you could do a couple of different things. You might know off the top of your head what this is, or you could skip count by 12s to figure out how many groups of 12 there are in 60. And there are 5 groups of 12. So 60 inches equals 5 feet. If we wanted to look at 36 feet is how many yards? Well, I know that 3 feet is 1 yard. So I'm going to divide 36 by 3, and I know that that is equivalent to 12. So 36 feet is 12 yards. And you could even check with multiplication. Pretend that you were going from yards to feet. 12 times 3 is 36. 5 times 12 is 60. One more, let's look at 79 inches is how many feet? Well, I know that it's 12 inches to make 1 foot, so I'm going to be dividing by 12. So 79 divided by 12, well, I already figured out that 5 groups of 12 is 60, so I could add on another group of 12, that's 72. Another group of 12 is 84, that's too many. So 79 divided by 12 is going to be 6 feet, because that would be 72 inches. And then I have a remainder. So 79 inches is actually 6 feet and 7 inches. So I'm going to box all of this. 6 feet and 7 inches is the same as 79 inches. And if you're looking for a challenge with this type of work might look like this. 5,476 yards equals how many miles? So I know that 1 mile is 1,760 yards, but I don't know how to divide 5,476 by 1,760. So something you could do is use repeated subtraction, which is the same as division, to figure out how many miles this is. So 5,476 yards, I'm going to subtract 1 mile in yards. To regroup here. Okay, so I'm just going to put this here for my thinking. That's a mile. I'm going to subtract another mile in yards. So that's 1 mile. Okay, and I can subtract another mile. Might run out of room here. I'm going to add another sheet of paper under here. So I've got another mile that I'm subtracting. Okay, so now I can see that I have got 196 left over. I could not take another 1,760 away from that. So I'm going to see I have 3 groups of 1 mile. So I've got 3 miles and 196 yards. So that is a way that you could complete some challenge problems if you're faced with something like this and you can't do long division to figure it out. So friends, I'm going to take a picture of all of these and post them so that if you don't want to rewatch the video and you just need to take a look at how we solved some of these problems, that's going to be there for you.